and or part of the city of Tucson. Part of the confusion seems to be some leftover concern about where Republican strength is in the Tucson community. I want to show you a map that, if you can see the dark green line here, goes down the east side through the northeast part of Tucson, etc. That is the existing lines for LD 18 on the approved map. If you look at the legend over here on the right, blue is obviously voting for Democrat, red is voting for Republican, and then you got the yellow and the more shaded colors that indicate somewhere in the middle. Part of the problem with the District 18 and the Catalina foothills is, can someone show me in LD 18, the proposed boundaries, where Republicans have any kind of strength? There isn't. Even 5 years ago, there were areas in the Catalina foothills where you could see some red on this map. The reality is, Democrats have moved into the Catalina foothills and have taken it over. You will note there is a very dark blue area around First Avenue Campbell. And when you go east and west of that, it pretty much stays blue or light blue. I don't know about you, but if you want to see a Republican representative in the legislature out of Pima County, we need to draw some lines that actually reflect where Republicans have some strength. The proposed map has District 17 with Oro Valley, Marana, Saddlebrook, goes through the Catalina Mountains, and basically takes in the Houghton Corridor, Tanque Verde, and goes all the way down to Vail. Now, we can sit here and nitpick about this map until we're blue in the face. The reality is, in the big scheme of things, if we want, as Republicans out of Pima County in the legislature, the only shot we've got, based on where the population lives, is this map. I have problems with this map. Each person in this room can probably pick out problems with this map, but that is the reality. I'm not saying things to ruin your day. I'm not saying these things to make it inconvenient for you, but this is the reality Republicans have to deal with on the ground. Yes, there are Republican votes in 18 and 19 and 20 and 21 and 23 and 16. If you're running countywide or statewide, there's Republican votes to be had. But as a legislative district, we're kind of stuck. The folks in 19 on the far southeast part of the Pima County, you'll be in a safe Republican district. The folks as drawn in this far west side of Tucson, on the other side of the Tucson Mountains, basically following Altar Valley up into Pinal County, you've got a decent shot at electing a Republican. But if you live in Pima County proper and want to have a representative from Pima County in the legislature, this is probably our best shot at it. I don't like having to come to say this to you, but there's been a lot of confusion over the last few weeks where people are trying to suggest, let's put part of the foothills in with some district X, Y, or Z. The problem is when you do that, and I will show you right, apologies, I thought I had pulled it up and I didn't. The infamous 9.0, this is the one that the Democrats would love nothing more than to have, okay? This puts basically Casas Adobes, Marana, and Oro Valley and Saddlebrook in one district. But the sad reality is it will lean Democrat. So if you live in this part of the foothills, your shot at getting a Republican elected, it's going to be a very uphill climb.
Oro Valley.
Oro Valley,
Wow.
or Marana, okay? Because as we saw on this map over here, there's a lot of blue in here, a lot of blue. And that blue, if you look, yeah, there's some red up here. It's not enough to overcome this. This map is based on these colors come from the IRC system that's based on the census data. They look back at the voter rolls. They look at the actual votes in 8 different elections, including governor, attorney general, presidential, and drawing a blank on what the other one was. But they take the high and the low, they average it out, and this shows you even where the independents will lean in their vote totals, okay? Taking into consideration some of the independents that are gonna be in here, they're voting more blue than red. That's the reality.
And there's a lot of California license plates coming into the foothills, Morro Valley and everything, it's just crazy.
One thing to keep in mind, voter registration does not come into play in this stuff. Voter registration does not come into play on this, okay? This is all voting patterns.
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, babe.
What's the timeline trajectory when these things will be solidified?
I'll get to that in just one second. Right now, the Redistricting Commission is in a listening tour. This will go through the first week of December. If you want to weigh in and be a voice for a particular kind of map, be it congressional or legislative, there's multiple ways you can do it. You can just send an email to the commission. Some people have signed up to talk during the teletown halls. There'll be some additional in-person meetings as we go through that first week of December. I'm sure all of you have received some email form in the last few weeks from the party indicating how to do that. The bottom line is you need to think strategically when you're making your argument for a given map. Keep the partisanship out of your argument. It will be immediately dismissed by members of the commission if you say you're a Republican or we need more Republicans, whatever the reason happens to be. Strategically, you want to make the argument that says we have a community of interest. In the case of this map, what is the one common theme between the people living up here and the people living all the way over here?
Work for a living?
Very good.
Yes. But what is probably the number one thing each and every person living, even some Democrats would say, living in those areas?
Out of the city.
What?
Out of the city.
They want nothing to do with the politics of the city of Tucson. Okay? Use that argument against the Democrats. Okay? You don't need to say Democrat, you don't need to say Republican. Simply say, these people have chosen to live somewhere. They love Southern Arizona. They don't want anything to do with the city of Tucson. They have a community of interest. You can make additional arguments, but I'm trying to stress to you, think strategically. Some of the people at Cell Town Hall yesterday were talking about, they were Democrats or they were Republicans. All well and good, but if you're trying to persuade the independent on that commission to approve a map that is favorable to some kind of representation out of Pima County, regardless of whether the Democrats are in charge in Phoenix or the Republicans, having a legislator from Pima County, the second largest in the state, the 44th or 45th largest in the country, in the majority. There are things that need to be done for Pima County that have nothing to do with Republicans or Democrats. But if the vast majority of the people out of Pima County representation are Democrats and there's no Republicans, but the Republicans are the majority up there, is anybody in Phoenix going to listen to us? Not really. Not really. Okay? Vic, you can give us chapter and verse on that. Yes.
One of the things that Shelley is doing in her LD, and I thought it was a really great idea, we can do it in ours, is that if you're not going to speak, but you want to be at the meeting in December 4th, you can, somebody who is going to speak can write their statement, and if you believe in it, you can sign it, and then just stand behind them in the meeting. So you're not speaking, but you're supporting that person's statement, so I think that that's something that we can probably coordinate for all of us who, may not feel comfortable or just don't feel enthusiastic about making our own statement.
Yeah.
What time on December fourth is that IRC meeting? Does anybody know the time?
December fourth.
Yeah, what time?
What time?
Time.
They haven't come out with it yet.
It's on the map, it is on the website.
Because we have an event that day, we need to change our event.
December fourth, it will be at 10 a.m., that's a Saturday,
Okay.
okay? I want to emphasize the Catalina foothills just one more way. I've outlined just the foothills that is not in that LD 17 on the map. Casino is over here on the east side, going all the way to Sabino Creek. If you'll note down here, Dems are gonna win it 56 to 44. Just the Catalina foothills. Okay?
Can you say which map number you're recommending?
Number now.
10.0 for legislative, and I will just briefly show you the congressional map. Now, I have submitted a map, and you're free to look at it yourselves if you're so kind, that basically takes the approved map and carves out some additional areas for LD 6. And I'm using Mayor Romero's, huh? CD6, thank you, CD6, pardon me. That actually uses Mayor Romero's criticism of the existing map against her. She wants to have more of the city of Tucson in District 7. And I will show you this. Take some giggles. No, that's not the one. Sorry.
Is there a number
Yes.
on the congressional one that you recommend?
Yes, this is the one. And you'll note it's a lot different than the other one. Basically, I use River Road and the Pantano Creek to differentiate District 7, the Grijalva district, from District 6, which would be an open seat at this point since Kirkpatrick isn't running. But I restore, and if you looked at the existing maps, Green Valley, Corona de Tucson, Rito Ranch, etc., are in the existing Southeast Arizona map. I've restored that. I've also taken this chunk up here that on the other map is part of District 7, which Eloy, Casa Grande, and Arizona City shouldn't be part of that Southwest District. Yes, Vic?
So based on the existing congressional district maps, as they're showing or presenting, what, do you have an idea what the breakdown would be if it's 5 for Republican, or, you know, do you have an idea? Someone looked into that.
What is the mapping for CD6?
This is the breakdown that the commission uses.
063?
Huh?
Your map number for that?
Congressional district you're recommending?
Oh, 63, thank you. Yes. This shows you the Democrat wins versus the Republican wins in this column over here. District 6 shows Democrats winning 6 out of 9 contests as currently configured. The District 7 obviously is 9-0, that's the, for all intents and purposes, the Grijalva district. It shows a 2% spread in the existing configuration. I still maintain those areas that are existing, like Green Valley, Corona de Tucson, Rita Ranch, Davis-Monthan, should be in that southeast district. They have no business being in Grijalva's district. You know, if you're gonna argue for a congressional map, quote Regina Romero. Okay? And, you know, again, don't use partisanship, but just use her words to say, yeah, include more of the city of Tucson in your congressional map. And balance it out with the other more rural parts of southern Arizona, going with that southeast district. Make sense?
What is the number?
63 for congressional and 51, I think, was the LD map. I'll stay after and help answer those questions for you. I don't want to take up too much more time because the guests are here to speak. Last question.
Okay, for those of us that need some help, would you put out an email, a sample email, Bill, that would help us,
I will send it to John and Ron, and they will distribute accordingly in there.
you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay?
so we can be supportive.
Yeah, John.
Bill, does it make any sense to nail the board down, show them the diesel map? The map that we got from, that shows the foothills as to where the.
I show that, yes. This one?
Is that the means, is that the
Yes.
one we had?
Yes.
Okay, cause I don't recognize it. You've updated it with the numbers, I don't remember.
No, it just looks different on the screen there.
Right, okay, but just zoom in on the foothills. Right there.
Castleton all the way over to Sabino Creek.
And you know what, I think we're putting a compact district together. When my mother was a state representative, she had Eastside Tucson, Sierra Vista, Sonoya, Patagonia, Green Valley. She had all that geographical area as an LD, not even as a CD. So I think this is a very compact district you've shown, so.
I'll make one other argument for this LD 17 in southern Arizona. The complaints, if you've listened to any of the critics arguing about 17, it's not compact, it's not competitive, yada, 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 yada. They're strangely silent on some other districts that are right next door. District 21, right here, goes from basically South Tucson, Davis-Monthan, down through Sarita, actually transverses another district to get all the way down to Nogales. We have this lovely district in the north part of the state that actually covers 7 different counties. Not so compact. District 30, to travel from the northern part of the district to the southern part of this district, there is no bridge that connects this. That's the Grand Canyon. You have to actually exit the state of Arizona, go through Nevada to get to the other part of the district. So all of the complaints that the Democrats like to use about 17 fall on deaf ears as far as I'm concerned, because their logic is incomplete. They're only applying it to one district and one district alone. I'm sorry, they can't abide a Republican district in southern Arizona. It's that simple. Don't say that, but point out their hypocrisy in your argument if you have the opportunity. Okay? I'll stick around after and can answer any other additional questions on this. Want to give our guests full opportunity. Roy, anything else?
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm Levi Hurley. I work for Shelley Kais as the county co-chair with Nolan Reedhead on the redistricting. Bill's into this and does a great job on this thing. A couple of things for you folks in here. So what do? You're in this district, you hate it. I get it. So what kind of arguments can you make for the commission? As Bill said, we should argue for a balanced Pima County. To make sure that we have representation, no matter who's in charge in Phoenix. We haven't had that representation the last 10 years, all right? So you guys argue that you want to see a balanced portfolio of representatives, no matter who's in charge. Okay, that's a good argument for you folks here. Another one is interesting that Nolan Reed had made. It was kind of funny. It was pretty good. It was about they keep complaining about the voter thing about competitive. He pointed out there are about 2, 3, or 4 districts in your Democrat that have huge Democrat advantages, and they're not complaining about that.
70-30.
70-30, they're not complaining about that. I thought that was great from Nolan Reed did yesterday. So, you know, it hurts, like Bill says, I understand it, I get it, okay? But the point is that this is it. We've got about, what, 4 weeks ago, something like that?
Less than that.
We got less than 4 weeks. They're gonna nail these maps down very quickly, okay? The Democrats are trying really hard to go back to version 9, which basically pulls the Tanque Verde Valley into Tucson, kind of like LD10 is today. If they do that, Republicans are screwed. There's just no other way to put it. I'll leave with that.
For 1 second, the timetable for selling southern Arizona is now, it's not week after
Right.
next, or whatever.
It's
Phoenix
now.
and Phoenix, whether we like it or not, are the big dogs. And I lived in Phoenix in the West Valley for a while, and I can tell you that their view of Tucson, just like those in the foothills and those out in these remote areas, don't wanna live in the city, don't wanna be a part of the city of Tucson. They don't want any part of Pima County. We've sent some horrible legislators up there over the years, and John Cronco among them, who made, when I was lobbying, called me a bunch of names because I was representing a company he didn't like, stood up and walked off, and did this, that, and the other. We've sent fools to the legislature in Pima County. We've sent some pretty good
Yeah.
people too. But the reputation precedes us, and the reputation is everything.
One last
We
thing.
need to get this done.
The last thing, this is the next 10 years, folks. Think about it, the next 10 years. There's a lot of noise going on right now, in the party, or somebody from Cochise is trying to muck around with stuff, but please ignore it, okay? All that stuff we can take care of in January or whatever, okay? Please, keep your eye on the ball, and this is the ball.
Bill, one last question. When's the end date on this? When is all this gonna be set in stone?
They have to, by law, they have to, accept a final version by the end of the year. Their timeline right now, as I understand it, is they're trying to accept the final map the week before Christmas. There will be, you think it's bad down here in southern Arizona with the arguments for the Phoenix metro area will make our arguments pale in comparison. They haven't really started the fight up there yet, on the commission. The reality is, if we don't coalesce and advocate and activate people that we know to speak on a specific kind of map, the Democrats are going to win this argument. We need to be out in full force. If you don't feel comfortable speaking in person, fine. Put it in writing, email it. Those of you that don't email, go snail mail, all right? They do accept those submissions, all right? The bottom line is, if you are silent, your silence will be on you for the next 10 years. It's that simple. Scott?
When the lawsuits start flying.
Yeah, there's no if, there's when.
How does that affect the timeline into January, into February, and how does it affect us in organizing an LD and all that stuff?
Short version, if history is any guide, once the maps are finalized, there will inevitably be court fights. They will be at federal court and they will be at state court, okay? If history again is any guide, by the middle of January, we'll know one way or the other what those suits are gonna look like. Typically, a judge, unless he allows an injunction and freezes everything in place, the lawsuits will pretty much have to be done by the end of January, first part of February. Once those are out of the way, the state party will officially notify all 30 legislative districts it's time to dissolve as an existing entity and reorganize under your new configuration, whatever is acceptable on the maps. The one thing I will say on an injunction, and there's always a possibility of it because it's happened in other states. If the judge determines that there is enough case to argue that the maps, be they congressional or legislative, are not correct, and whatever the arguments are about it, the injunction would basically freeze the existing lines for at least this cycle, okay? That's the reality.
This cycle meaning election cycle.
This election cycle for the next 2 years, okay? And then they'll fight it out in court for however long it takes them to fight it out in court. In some states like Texas, it took them a long time. I think they've, over the last decade, 2 or 3 different maps to configure both their legislative, I think their congressional representation, if I'm not mistaken. So it does happen. With us, who knows?
If it goes smoothly, then the state chairman let them know that
If things go smoothly, we will receive some kind of notification from the state chair. My best guess at this point is probably in February. By the end of March, most of the reorganization will at least have had their dates set for reorganization. Remember, as political entities, we do have to give notice, official and otherwise, you got the 10-day notice, et cetera, et cetera. So there will be lead time required to locate a facility for doing the reorganization, all those logistical headaches that are part of this process. And usually, Donna, what was it last time? It was April before we got reorganized?
Yep.
Yeah.
April 23.
So, again, it could be well into the spring before this legislative district dissolves and forms in a new entity. Yes, last question.
Also make a comment to everybody, so how is this going to affect the existing elected and appointed PCs going from a 9, going to an 8?
Your status as a precinct committeeman does not change. If you're appointed now, you will be appointed in the new district. If you're elected now, you will be elected in the new district, period.
You mistake those two legislative question numbers.
I believe it's, the map I advocated for was 63 and 51. I'll confirm that before the end of the meeting.
Just one last reminder, don't identify yourselves as Republicans or PCs. Also avoid talking about competitive districts. That's the favorite buzzword of the Democrats. It's like the least of the priorities, and they love to talk about that. So let's just avoid talking about competitive districts. It's a Democrat buzzword.
Right, and per the redistricting commission, I just wanna quote to you.
And if you make a testimony, get it down to 2 minutes.
Yep.
That's all you're allowed. They will literally cut you off.
There are 6 criteria that you have to follow. Follow the federal law. Congressional legislative districts as compact as possible. Equal population, compact, follow communities of interest, follow geographic features, and competitive should be favored where to do so would create no significant detriment to the other goals. In other words, they will not sacrifice communities of interest for competitiveness. The Democrats will quote federal court rulings, they will quote state court rulings. The reality is that is the language in the proposition passed by the voters that set up the Independent Redistricting Commission. Competitiveness will not take precedence over the other criteria, period. Okay, I'm gonna shut up now and let the candidates speak. If you got other questions, see me after.
And so, yeah, we're gonna go straight to candidates. We'll